Hello all, welcome to the 6th installment of my Top 10 series. In this version, I will be counting down the 10 plus people who I consider to be the most influential Hispanics in world history, just in time for Hispanic History Month. Disclaimer, this is by how influential these figures are, not if they are good or bad people. Without further ado, here are my picks. Before I begin, what constitutes a person as being Hispanic? The definition I will use will include all Iberians, meaning people from Spain, Portugal, and Andorra, which were together the Roman province of Hispania, where the word Hispanic comes from, and all Latin Americans who share ancestry to these countries, seen in the creation of new racial identities such as mestizos, mulattoes, and Creoles in the colonial period of the Spanish and Portuguese empires. Without further ado, let's begin. Coming in at number 10 is famed artist Frida Kahlo. Being instantly recognizable, Kahlo's artwork captured the soul of Mexican culture using a mixture of styles including Cubism, Realism, and Surrealism. Her works were often dedicated to depicting historically undiscussed indigenous groups and women, empowering these occasionally marginalized groups by bringing awareness of them to a broader audience and conscience. It is clear that Frida Kahlo's star won't be fading anytime soon. Would you look at that? Number 9 is another artist. This time, Pablo Diego Jose Francisco de Paula Juan Nepomuceno Maria de los Remedios Cipriano de la Santísima Trinidad Ruiz y Picasso, aka Pablo Picasso. One of the titans of the art world, Picasso's legacy goes beyond just what is on the canvas. The true meaning of some pieces isn't clear, and when asked about this, Picasso would occasionally shoot at people with blanks. Being a pioneer known to have helped create Cubism and engaging in modernism and impressionism, Picasso's art had a deeply personal nature, often being tied to his own beliefs or what he has observed and experienced, including his Blue Period art and Guernica, depicting the horrors of the Spanish Civil War, revealing some of his political and moral views that would be seen by and leave an impression on millions the world over. Next up is a pair of people who together share the 8th spot, Cesar Chavez and Dolores Huerta. Hailing from Arizona and New Mexico respectively, Chavez and Huerta both belong to migrant families that had recently moved to the U.S., seeking better economic stability. By the time the two had grown up in the U.S., they would discover how much struggle Hispanic farmers went through here, whether it was the inability to unionize, natural disasters, poor working conditions and salaries, or rampant discrimination. By the time Chavez and Huerta would meet, they formed the United Farm Workers to fight for better working conditions and pay, as well as rights to unionize. The two's voices would prove immensely successful in subsequent years, with the Agricultural Labor Relations Act of 1979 contributing to a better future for millions across this country today. That hat, that cigar, who could it be besides number 7, Fidel Castro? Being born under the American-backed dictatorship of Fulgencio Batista in Cuba, Castro would grow tired of his oppressive policies. While in Mexico City in 1955, he met a certain Che Guevara. Soon the two plotted to stage a revolution in Cuba to establish a socialist government that they thought would be closer to the people. And so, by 1959, after thousands of military and civilian deaths, the revolution was a success. Castro would soon be cozy with the Soviet dictator Nikita Khrushchev to the chagrin of U.S. President JFK. By 1962, this tension reached a boiling point in the Cuban Missile Crisis. When Soviet missiles in Cuba pointed at the U.S. and American missiles in Turkey pointed at the USSR, the world braced itself for nuclear apocalypse. When a deal was reached, the world breathed a sigh of relief. Castro was furious, continuing to rule the island for another 50 years until his death in 2016. Yes, number 6 is someone who's still around, Supreme Court Justice Sonia Sotomayor. Having a difficult start to life, she would struggle living in the Bronx with her Puerto Rican family, having an alcoholic father who died when she was 7, leaving her mother to raise the family. The same year, she would also be diagnosed with type 1 diabetes. Determined to forge her best future, Sonia would be able to enter Princeton University and even attend the Yale Law School to fight for people who struggled as she had early on. After rising through the judicial system of New York and the Second Circuit Court, Sotomayor would have the honor of being nominated and confirmed as the first Hispanic person to become a sitting justice of the Supreme Court, thanks to Obama, where she has fought for civil rights and social justice for millions of Americans. The Triple Alliance, otherwise known as the Aztec Empire, had prospered for well over 2 centuries, centered at the beautiful lake capital of Tenochtitlan in central Mexico. Ah, grounds for economic exploitation, said number 5 sitting on the hillside looking down, being Hernan Cortez. A conquistador sent by Charles I of Spain, Cortez would formally bring what is now Mexico under the Spanish crown by invading Tenochtitlan and defeating the Aztec monarch Moctezuma. While he only conquered a small portion of the modern country of Mexico, this event laid the foundations for what is now the largest Spanish-speaking country in the world to develop. Who is number 4 Gama be? It must be Vasco da Gama. A native of Portugal, da Gama would be sent by King John II, or Jean II of Portugal, to find a route to access the lucrative markets of India, primarily to obtain those sweet, sweet spices, which must have been a hot topic for him. Sorry, this is going up in smoke. I'm running on fumes at this point. Find a route to India he did, and in 1498, he reached the southwestern coast of India, establishing the first European presence here in the city of Goa. More importantly for the course of history, this would be the beginning of 5 centuries of imperialism, as this was the first instance of colonialism to occur, seeing a country rule another part of another country for its own advantage. Thanks to Gama. Kicking off the top 3 is another explorer, this time being Ferdinand Magellan. Born and raised in Portugal just like Vasco da Gama, he would soon enter the court of the aforementioned Jean II's successor, Manuel I. He asked him to pick up where da Gama had left off. In 1519, he and his crew set off to find a westward route to Asia to connect with the valuable trading ports that had opened up, mainly for spices. Upon reaching South America, his crew would go south until they found a series of channels now named for him as the Strait of Magellan. The waters were so violent that as soon as he reached the ocean, he noted the calm waters, naming it peaceful, the grounds for what is now the Pacific Ocean. Upon reaching Asia, more specifically the Philippines on the island of Cebu, hostilities between natives and Magellan led to him being killed. His crew finished his expedition, becoming the first crew in history to circumnavigate the world, opening up an immense knowledge of the world that has connected the old world to the new world ever since. Almost at number 1, here is number 2, Simone Bolivar. Originally from Venezuela, Bolivar would grow frustrated with the harsh reality of living under the Spanish Empire, seeing as he had stripped the basic liberties of his subjects and as overly intrusive into local economies via mercantilist policies, requiring colonists to send their resources back to Spain. And so, when a certain Corsican dwarf, Napoleon, invaded Spain, he noticed Spain would be distracted, and so he launched a revolution to free Venezuela in 1808. From 1810 to 1826, he assisted in the revolutionary wars of Venezuela, Colombia, Ecuador, Peru, Bolivia, and Panama, successfully creating 6 new countries. Having completely altered the geopolitical landscape of an entire continent, I would say he has certainly earned his spot. And now, coming in at number 1 is another pair of people, the 2 I consider to be the most important Hispanic people in all of history. They are King Ferdinand II and Queen Isabella, the renowned power couple of Spain. When the 2 ascended to their thrones in Aragon and Castile respectively, they were but a collection of monarchs ruling in smaller kingdoms along the Iberian Peninsula. Upon their marriage in 1469, the 2 would merge their kingdoms, setting the beginning of what would become Spain. Over the next 30 years, they would expand their lands into the former emirates of Córdoba and Granada. By 1492, they had finished their Reconquista, pushing out these 2 emirates as well as the rest of the Moorish kingdoms, formally establishing the Spanish Empire, which would go on to dominate the Americas and other areas, dethroning Portugal as the most powerful colonial empire of the time, as it would remain for the next 2 centuries. Additionally, this was the same year they sent a certain Genoese sailor across the seas, who you can learn about by clicking the link in the top right corner. Without Ferdinand and Isabella, there would be no Spain as we know it today, no Spanish Empire, no Latin America, no 1.2 billion people in 30 countries that speak Spanish and Portuguese, no murderous green little birds, or much of this video. Good these 2 did, sure. Mistakes they made, without a doubt. Influential, you can put a big fat check there. And with that, that was my top 10 video on who I consider to be some of the most influential Hispanics and Latin Americans of all of history. What a unique range of figures to come out of this slice of the world's population. Happy Hispanic History Month. Thanks for watching.